All right, so today I'm gonna talk about fear. You know, I think that's a subject that I know for me personally in my recovery, if I didn't address that, if I don't continue to address it, it's definitely something that can take me backward. I've seen it take other people backward. And the thing about it and what makes it tricky is that we can look at it the wrong we can look at it the wrong way, dismiss fear as being something else. And because we get this misunderstanding, right, that fear is about running or it's about freezing, and standing up to fear just means doing something. And it goes a lot deeper than that. That fear can hijack your decision making and cause you to act, and so when you make decisions based on that fear, many times we end up doing things that we probably wouldn't have done if we was in a different state of mind, right? And so that's something to be addressed. That's why I read, that's why I study things, and I came up with some good stuff, man. Cause you know what they say, man, that's real, You know what they say, man, a scared man will kill you. A lot of times we rationalize fear. You think about the reason why some people never go anywhere. It could be dreams, different things that you had wanted to do with your life, challenges, and you talked yourself down because of fear. And a lot of times that bothers us. I know what bothers me, man. Like we start getting into recovery, right? And a lot of times these principles, they start talking about, like, especially in these 12-step programs. You go to these places and you listen to these people talk, and a lot of times we talk about things like that sound like backing down, not engaging with nonsense or foolishness. Somebody over there talking all the smack, and they disrespected you or something like that, and you didn't engage with them. And many times what it feels like is, it feels like a loss, doesn't it? It feels like, man. And so then we have to deal with that. You got to process that information, and processing that information may go the wrong way, may cause you to go back and do something crazy. But what it boils down to is that initial threat response. And I think I spoke about that in another video. I'll tap into that a little bit. The difference between a challenge response and a threat response. But that fear, um, taking it and processing it is just imperative, And of course, then when things get too deep, you know, we don't feel like dealing with this kind of stuff anymore. Then it's really, really easy to use about it, right? And so I read this real good book. I had a good book on that, called The Fear Cure by Lisa Rankin. And it's real good. You should check it out. In the beginning, she begins to talk about why fear is detrimental to you, how it really kills you, how it really, really works on your body, and how it's detrimental, right? And I mean, she really, really gets into it almost exhaustively. But then she goes on to talk about basically, how to deal with that. And so it's not about, to the point to where I got it. And the reason why I'm sharing it is because it's not about backing down. It's not about letting people walk all over you or putting up with people's shit, and just, because that bothers people like us, right? But it's about being able to think through it and not let it interrupt or not let it change you, and that's what it does. Stress changes the way you think. It changes your brain on a molecular level, and I think that fear, a lot of times that fear changes people, puts people inside this box, And then it's easy for a lot of us, man. I know for me, right? Being in the system, incarceration, man, right? From the time I was young, from the time I was a young guy, young man, a boy, there was things that I wanted to do. There was a certain certain ideas that I had, a certain idealism, right? But then you get in trouble, you get reprimanded, things like incarceration and different things like that, they happen. And you don't want it to keep happening. I know for me, I knew that prison helped me understand that I didn't want to be a criminal, and not necessarily because fear of it wasn't the fear of it being so dangerous. And that's what a lot of us realize too, ain't it? When you go to prison and you see what it's really like, you see that it's not that it's so dangerous. It's that there's nothing happening. It's like you're removed from society and you're just at a standstill, right? And you see these people, and I know for me, man, I felt like I was just around a bunch of losers. And I saw that crook life was not what I thought it was. I looked at being a crook like it was slick, it was cool, there was some honor, and then there was some honor amongst thieves. I really, really believed in that homeboy shit, and then I saw the truth about it, that it's really, really a sad, low existence, and it's about what you can make it up to be, because most of the people in the streets is lying, right? Most of the people in prison is lying. They're telling a story from a perspective that it's not necessarily the whole story. And so, I mean, and maybe that's not so much fear as much as it's just, I don't want to associate with that. I want it to elevate. I want it to be better. I want it to be bigger. There's things that I wanted to do with myself, and maybe that wasn't selfish. And so I guess maybe that could fall under the fear of loss. But anyway, so there are 4 major fears based on what I got from this book. There's 4 major fears that that most other fears fall under, right? And once we acknowledge this, and once there's a practice that we can get out of it. Once you acknowledge what the 4 major fears are, and then how to counter each one, then it's a practice, right? And so the 4 major fears is basically the fear of uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen. And you think about how many different kinds of fears fall under that. It's why we ask when somebody invites us to the cookout, and you ask for who all over there, right? Because you don't know. It's uncertain of what's going to happen. You don't know what's going on. So the fear of uncertainty. Then there's the fear of being alone. A lot of people had a fear of being alone. And I mean, like, even people like me, I'm alone a lot. And I prefer to be, for the most part. And once upon a time, I was very social. But I didn't always do such a good job for me, the way I feel, I didn't always do the best job in finding people to be close to. So for that reason, I don't deal with a lot of people. But even with that being said, I'm a human being, and sometimes I do feel like that fear of being alone. I mean, I'm not a serial dater. I'm not a serial relationship person. But it does get to me. It does bother me sometimes. So I do get it. I do understand the fear of being alone. The next fear is the fear, and I think all of us have experienced this on some level. We've all experienced all of them at some capacity, but um, the next one is the world, the fear of the world being a dangerous place, right? You know, we had arguments, we had beef, somebody said this, somebody did that, or, you look at the news, you watch the news, and it's crazy. Politics is crazy, right? And all of these things that go on, man, and a lot of times sometimes it feels like we don't belong, which goes back to another fear of being alone, imposter syndrome, and things like that. I don't belong here. The world is crazy. It's moving too fast for me. And now that I think about it, going back and revisiting what I said a minute ago about prison, that could probably fall under fear of being alone. I felt like I didn't belong in prison, and I felt while I was in prison, I felt like, the world was moving away from me. So that was a fear. I guess it can fall under that. But the world being a dangerous place, I'm pretty sure all of us can relate to that somehow, even those of us that like to keep weapons on us, right? Some of us never leave the house without our guns on us, or a gun in some kind of reach. We had beef, some of y'all gangsters and stuff like that, and you justify it. I ain't gonna let somebody get me. I'm gonna get them before they get me, and all these different kinds of things. Well, that's fear. Regardless to how you respond to it, it doesn't matter whether you run or fight or freeze. It's all fear initially. So that could fall under that also, the fear of being a dangerous place. And then the last one is fear of loss, right? We don't want to lose the things we have. We're so scared somebody's going to take something from us, or we're going to lose something, and different things like that. And so those are the four major fears, and I want to talk about those, right? Because like I said a minute ago, man, it changes you. We start dealing with these kinds of things, and before you might have had a great plan, optimistic about things, but then those ideas begin to set in, and that's when you start modifying your plans or the things that you want to do. And a lot of times we just throw our plans out the window, and then especially when it comes to drugs, man. Oh man, I think that probably is the worst thing you could do to yourself. Um, and drinking, marijuana, drugs that are lighter is one thing. But when we start talking about hard drugs, and when I say hard drugs, I'm talking about those drugs that you use and that's it. You ain't doing nothing else. And that's we start really, really getting down into that thing, that addiction. But even when, we dealing with other substances like alcohol, marijuana, and things that we do, we feel like we functional. I still think that's like some of the worst thing you can do to yourself. And really, it really is because you hijack your reward center. And it allows for that fear to seep in a whole lot easier. Once you do a drug, you basically telling your body, you basically telling your brain, hey, really, we don't need to do anything else. Here's your reward right here. So everything else is just going through the motions. And if you're honest with yourself, you see how drugs and alcohol is your number one priority. I mean, how many times have you gotten off work and the first thing you want to do is make sure you got to the liquor store before it closed, or saw that man that got whatever it is you like, and those different kinds of things? You want to make sure that was in place because it was a priority. And that says a lot. And you prioritize that. That means that whatever achievement that you set out for is not as much of a need as it once was, because you can get the same euphoria, you can get the same feeling by using a drug or taking a drink. Right? And we feel like we're curing our fear by drinking or by using the stress that we feel, and then a lot of us think, man, I gotta smoke some weed, I gotta do this, I gotta, that wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that there are also toxins, right? All that stuff is also toxic. And so I'm gonna talk about this, the fear of uncertainty. Now, I like to talk about yoga, and not so much the principles. Like, I don't have a guided meditation video, or I don't really get too much into guided meditation anyway. But I like to talk about the principles behind it, and when we talk about religion, I don't put anybody's religion down. I don't want to take anybody's religion from them. But what I will say is that I think religion is awesome until we start getting into dogma. The basic premise of religion is great. The basic premise of religion, of every religion that I've come across, I've never seen a religion that goes against this, but the basic premise of every religion that I've come across is love. And it's not necessarily, I don't mean hugs and kisses, and you know what I'm saying, or giving all your stuff away to somebody or putting up with anything. But when I talk about love, what I'm talking about is oneness. I'm talking about knowing, understanding that you are part of this universe. And universe actually means something. One verse actually means something. You fit into this thing because you're a part of it. We're all one. Okay. And there's meaning behind it. There's a purpose behind it. You're here for a reason. You're designed to be able to do something really well. You're designed with talents. And so the more we try to separate ourselves, and the more we get away from that oneness, the more we get away from those ideals that bring us together and find our similarities, the more you begin to suffer. The more you begin to suffer, the more you begin to chase and grasp onto these ideas and these concepts that you feel like you gotta prove. But if you notice, the more you chase them, the more they run. And this idealism that sets you apart, right? So when we start talking about this uncertainty, the thing that's so fearful about uncertainty, and whichever fear that you got that falls under it, like me being in prison and thinking that the world was going to, pass me by, or, whatever it was, the cookout, you don't know who's going to be there. And so you're worried about that, or, whatever the uncertainty is, your job, your marriage, your relationship, whatever's going on with you. The key to overcoming that kind of fear is basically thinking about the outcome that you're attached to. Inside your mind, when it comes to this fear, you've already made up your mind that things are going to turn out this way. It's going to be negative, and you attach to that, right? And that's what the fearful thought is. But when you understand oneness, and we start dealing with when we acknowledge and accept the fact that not only am I a part of this universe, but there's a purpose. Everything happens for a reason. So regardless of the decision you make, you don't have to go to the cookout. right? I definitely had a choice about not going back to prison, but while I'm in prison, that didn't mean the world was passing me by. I mean, there was a whole lot of there was a whole lot of educational opportunities that I got in prison, so it wasn't necessarily that the world was passing me by. And furthermore, I mean, it was staff there. It was people that left and went out in the world and came back all the time. I got visits from my family all the time. So you see, it's that fear. What happens is that fear sets in. We get that initial fear and we begin to make decisions based on it. And those decisions that we make is what causes the stress, right? And then thinking that we're not supposed to feel that way. Understand that these feelings, man, they come and go. You don't have to attach to them. You don't have to keep them and hold on to them. You can feel it and you can let it go. And one of them is by don't think you have to know what the future holds, because you don't. Don't attach to an outcome. And it's okay. It's okay to be wrong. You may be wrong. You may be right. If you're wrong, it doesn't mean that you're any less of a human being. You know what I'm saying? It's not a penalty to be wrong. And as a matter of fact, you avoid any embarrassment that comes from being wrong if you don't attach to that outcome or think that things has to be a certain way, because the truth is nothing has to be any kind of way. Nothing has to be any kind of way. This is the universe, man. Knowledge is infinite. I mean, you know. And so that fear of uncertainty, the counter for that is, we don't attach, we don't attach to these outcomes. We don't burden ourselves. We don't frustrate ourselves with thinking that I have to make something be this way, or I have to know how things is going to turn out, And so you can relax. You can learn how to breathe. You can learn how to meditate, man. Learn how to start meditating. Meditation. A lot of people, I think that we can't meditate. We don't know how to meditate because you keep going back to these thoughts. But it's basically, meditation is just basically concentrating on your breathing, deep breaths. And just because you think thoughts, you forget about your breath and start thinking, that doesn't mean you don't do it. You're not doing it right. Actually, going from a thought, thinking about your breathing, your mind wandering to a thought, and then bringing it back to your breathing is the practice. That is what meditation is, and it's a practice. It's an exercise. You make your brain stronger, and so the more you do that, the more often you do that, the better you'll get at it. I meditate every morning when I wake up, and it helps you, So when we say something like, okay, well, you say, well, I have a fear of uncertainty, and I say, okay, well, don't attach to outcomes, and that thing seems like a hard thing for you to do. Well, through the practice of meditation, it will become easier for you. And so I'm just giving you a principle here to focus on that you can practice, and I can 100% guarantee you it'll get easier to focus on. So boom, moving right along is the fear of being alone. And I know maybe it don't seem like it, because like I said, I don't, my children is grown. I really don't have those serious responsibilities. I'm not married. I'm by myself a lot and I enjoy it. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that I always want to be alone. Yes, sometimes I think about it. Sometimes I think about it and no, I don't want to die alone. I'd love to meet the right woman and get married and, maybe have some more children or whatever. That sounds great to me. So I do feel that way sometimes. Sometimes I do have that fear, like, man, that's never going to happen for me. It's never going to work out. Or I think about what's going on with my family or some of the people that I know, and I think negative thoughts about that, right? I think that maybe not that I'm disowned, but maybe they don't deal with me like that. My son, I got a son. My son doesn't call me as much as I think that he ought to, and sometimes I think about that, like, man, why my son don't talk to me, and that is part of fear of that falls under fear of being alone, you know. And so, and it does bother me, right? And so I have to meditate on those kinds of things. But the counter, how we counter that, um, is by understanding this is oneness. Understanding oneness. And like this goes back to the ultimate reality is oneness. The ultimate reality is love. You gotta remember that, because the minute I get off on it trying to figure out what somebody else thinks, and then even worse, getting upset about things, that's more division, right? And more separation, and putting these cynical thoughts into other people's heads and thinking, oh, well, so these people don't deal with me, or these people upset with me, or I realized that I did the best that I could. I know that the people that I say that I love, I genuinely love them, right? I know that I did. And if there is something that I felt like I didn't do right, I can apologize for it. I can make amends for it, right? Well, that's the most that I can do. If a person doesn't accept your apology, or if a person is still upset with you after you've tried to make amends for something you did wrong or whatever, I mean, that's on them. But the thing to remember is that we're all one, and this is a purposeful universe. I mean, this ain't just a bunch of random bullshit going on. And see, when we give up on that, when we give up on the idea that this is a purposeful universe, and we start thinking that, okay, everything is random and it's chaotic, and anything, you know what I'm saying, anything and everything happens for absolutely no reason, is the first step to suffering. That's the basis of fear, Going on into the next one, that's basically that's basically what the fear of the world being a dangerous place is, right? And so, no, I might not be in everybody's face smiling every day. I may not talk to my children all the time. I may not have the best relationship with my dad or my mom. And I may not have, me and my ex-wife got divorced, and the woman that I really love is off with somebody else, or whatever it is that you might be going through, right? The thing to remember is that we're all still here, man. We're all connected, you know, um, even when they're gone, right? You know, man, I mean, this thing is just so deep, man. And I really, really want to get into. I'm gonna make another video, I guess, and I'm gonna talk about. Let me write this down. I'm gonna talk about intuition, because even when those people that are gone, right, those people that left us, and I'm sure that's another fear, being alone. You might have a loved one that died on you or something like that, and I know I had an aunt. When my aunt died, man, that bothered me. I mean, I couldn't even. I never grieved for anyone the way I grieved for my Aunt Mary. She was just real. I mean, we had a uniquely personal relationship. Motherly, but It was just things that she shared with me that I don't think my own mom was capable of. And so when she died, man, that was some serious grief that I went through. But what was amazing about it was that it felt like she was still with me. Just because she died, I didn't fit. It wasn't like that connection evaporated. As a matter of fact, that connection felt stronger than ever, and that's what made me so emotional about it, because it's crazy, right? I went to the funeral and I didn't think it was going to bother me like that. But the closer I got, the more it's like I've been to funerals before. It's people in my family that's died, people that I've known, people that I've grown up with, and all that kind of stuff have died before. Now, it's not like I never went to a funeral. I was going to the funeral. I didn't think it was going to hit me like that until I got in the building and I sat down and I heard somebody speaking on her and started thinking about, man, they don't know her the way I knew her. And it was just this rush, I could feel it. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't alone. She didn't leave me. This is a purposeful universe, man, for real. And that's what we got to understand. That's what we got to remember. That's what we got to realize. I think that initially, religion set out to teach people these things. Religion set out to teach people things that weren't trivial, not magic. Religion set out to tell us what this whole thing means, and understanding the universe, man. Listen, people like to say, well, what does it all mean? What's the purpose? Why are we here on this planet? But notice nobody ever says that when they're happy. Nobody ever asks, what's the purpose? Why are we here when they're experiencing bliss? And so that's something to think about, right? And so, yeah, my aunt didn't leave me, man. I still feel with me right now. And I can say that for a few of my relatives that passed. We're all one. And so, moving right along, the fear that the world is a dangerous place. Feels good to breathe. All right, fear that the world is a dangerous place. Okay, yeah. Once you understand, right? I know a lot of my brothers and sisters out there, right? A lot of us got this thing with us, and I deal with it too. This ego, Sometimes I find myself feeling some type of way because I don't think somebody spoke to me right. I'm walking through the parking lot. Somebody drove past me just a little bit too fast. They must not know who I am, right? That ego kicks in, and then kick it up a notch when those people that really, really have, transgressed against somebody really, really did. Somebody stole from you, or, something happened. You got into an argument, you felt disrespected, and all of these different kinds of things. And that initial feeling, that fight or flight response, that fear, that makes you kick in, and many times think that we gotta fight somebody. It'll change the way you think. And then if you like me, because like I said, I've been to prison, I'll share it with you. I'm a 3-time felon, 2-time violent felon. Last time I was on probation, my probation officer let me know, hey, you're a prime candidate for a habitual felon. You need to watch your misdemeanors, because I got a slew of them too. So I take that into account, and I'm good now. What I'm saying? I've practiced these things. I know how to keep myself. I know how to check my own self, and my decision making as far as what I'm going to do. I think about that because I don't want to go to prison for being a habitual felon. I mean, who does? But there's still that afterwards. Those thoughts to come afterward. And that's part of it too. Part of the fear, thinking it's a dangerous place too. So because you didn't engage with someone, and it's something to remember, because I know what most people would probably think. What you might be thinking right now is, well, if you don't do something about it, or what if they do something to you? You got to get them before they get you. Well, the thing about it, and that's a valid thought, of course, because things happen, right? Right. But see, here's the thing about us. Once you get that initial fear, that initial feeling of fear, right? Things happen, right? Heart rate increases, your blood circulates faster, some of us get hot. There's a whole lot of chemical processes that go on inside the body, right? And some of them is your body makes you stronger. It pumps more blood into your muscles. You might need to run, you might need to fight. But in order so that you can do that, in order so that you can do these things, your body shuts down certain things that you don't need. Like it shuts down digestion, it shuts down your reproduction. Anything that you don't need to defend yourself or get away from the danger, your body will shut it down to help you save your life, right? And the thing about that is that it's designed to only happen for a short amount of time. So, of course, if somebody's in your face and they talking junk, and you feel like your life is in danger, and you feel that fear, that's the purpose of it. You need to fight. You need to get away from that situation. But when it becomes unhealthy is when we maintain that state of mind. Like some of us think, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And you look at the world as if it's a dangerous place. And so when that situation happens, okay, well, somebody said such and such, or somebody did such and such. Now, the situation is over. It's played itself out. Whatever they said it. They're gone. The danger is no longer present. But you keep ruminating about it, and it stays in your mind. You stay thinking about it. Well, when you thinking about it and feeling that feeling again, whether you get upset, whether you get frightened or whatever, it's taking you back to that fight or flight. Your amygdala, which controls fight or flight thinking, is activating again. So we wonder why we had these issues, digestive issues, heart disease, a lot of times, what I'm saying, we can't connect with people. You know what I mean? It's hard for us to connect. It's hard for us to do a lot of the things that we really, really wish that we could do. A lot of that is stress and holding on to these things, right? And much of it stems from this basic fear that this is a dangerous world. You think you need to be that way. You think you need to be on guard. You need to be mad about something. And then let's not even get into the fact that much of entertainment and then the media, social media and all of that promotes these ideas. You listen to a lot of this rap music, man, watch these movies and stuff, and you keep listening to the news. And it will tell you, it sells you these ideas that are not working for you. They are making you sick and they're tearing you down. And it's what I talk about in 10 Points of Recovery. They are not out there ideas that are not working for you, they're working for somebody else. And so, the counter, this basic fear that we have of the world being such a dangerous place, is understanding the fact that this is a purposeful universe. You have a purpose here. You're not just here randomly. Okay. You're part of this universe. There's things going on. All you got to do is understand what your role is in it. You know, getting to understand what your talent is. And I promise you, it's not being a crackhead. It's not being a dope fiend. It's not being a drunk. It's not being just a prisoner. It's not just being, whatever derogatory thing you want to say about yourself. You have something that can show and prove oneness. There's something about you that can show and prove the ultimate truth in life. And I mean on a supreme level. And it's just about you tapping into it. And so you gotta understand, man, that there's a reason for it. And a lot of times, man, these people, man, because I know some of them too. I know some of these stupid people too, that love conflict or seem like they want to make somebody miserable. And a lot of times they might be there for you to feel sorry for them. You never know what a person is going through. It could be a desperate cry for help. But above all else, what I find is what they're here for is to teach me a lesson. I learn from them, and if I don't have to accumulate cuts and scars kicking somebody's ass, then why do it? Like I said, I'm a prime candidate for habitual felon. If I don't have to go to prison, or because right, we don't like to think about prison, right? But if I don't have to carry that stress of knowing that I done did something to somebody, what if somebody tell it on me, or what if the police figure it out? If I don't have to carry that stress on me, then why do it? People ask the question, well, what's the purpose of life? And it's always when they doing bad. It's always when they can't figure something out. It's always when they stressed out. The purpose of life is to experience joy. Once you understand that, then you'll ask the question, well, why am I making myself miserable? By grasping, why am I making myself miserable by holding on to these ideas, chasing these ideas, some bullshit reality? Why am I holding on to these things that are making me miserable? And so I used the example. I'm walking through the parking lot. Somebody drove past me a little bit too fast. Maybe that's the wrong idea to have. Maybe I'm in the wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with that thought. They drove past me a little bit too fast. Maybe because they have a problem. And, maybe they were being a jerk. Maybe they were being inconsiderate. I don't know. I can't say what's on somebody else's mind, but I don't have to attach to it, because once I attach to it, once I get upset, and once I start thinking about it, you see what I'm saying? Once I hold on to that thought is when suffering begins. That's the breakdown. That's the divide. That's the separation right there. When I start thinking these negative thoughts and these things that, these ideas, it's going to take me backward. The best thing to do, it's one thing if he trying to hit me, he trying to hit me, then, I'm saying, the best you can do is that fear, because the fear does have a purpose. So the best you can do, I guess, is that fear kick in. You'll start thinking of ways to save your life. Because this is a purposeful universe. You'll think of something, Maybe I shouldn't walk through the parking lot. Maybe I should stick to the sidewalk, right? Um, you'll think of something, the bottom line, but we don't want to stay in that space because it's unhealthy. That's what causes heart disease. That's why people end up with heart attacks and strokes and all kinds of health disorders. Many times it's because of holding on to that stress, thinking that you are not supposed to ever feel that way, first of all, and then holding on to it. You know. It's like me telling you not to think about elephants. Me say, don't think about elephants. That's all you're going to think about is elephants, right? No, fear is natural. These feelings that we have are natural. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean you got to grasp onto it. It doesn't mean that you're any lesser than what people think, what somebody else is going through does not have to define you. It doesn't have to be a part of your psychology. It don't have to be a part of what you think. It doesn't have to be on your mind. You can let it go and let them have their shit, right? And get back to bliss. Get back to what the real meaning of life is, being happy, self-improvement, working on you, your dreams, and understanding what's going on with you and getting better, getting to that next level. That's the purpose of life, not dwelling on somebody else's bullshit. And so that's what it's all about, because this is a purposeful universe, So when you get that, then you're not so much afraid anymore. I heard these guys say, I'm moving along, right? But I remember I was working with these guys, man. These guys was crazy too. My dad does contract work, and one day he kind of put me in this position where I thought was cool. I was in Baltimore, and he had a contract for this house. He hired some guys to work on this house, and he left me with him. Again, I kind of felt like I was kind of in a supervisor position. I was the boss's son. I was feeling real cool, but man, these guys was crazy. Some of the stuff that they was talking about, and it wasn't like I was no spring chicken. I mean, I just got out of prison. I was fresh out of prison, maybe a few months, maybe probably about 6, 7 months or whatever. But these dudes was crazy, man. But I always remember this, something that one of the guys said. He said, man, we live by faith, not by fear. I always remembered that. I was like, word, I still ain't had much to say to them guys, man. They was wild. And I think they got off. I wasn't driving. He gave me a ride home. My dad left me with him. They gave me a ride to my mother's house. They was on their way. They was talking about getting high and all this kind of shit. And so I didn't have much to say to those dudes, but what he said, that was just like, okay, I see where you're going with it. Hey, live by faith, not by fear. I'm not advocating being crazy or definitely not advocating getting high, but this is a purposeful universe, man. This is definitely a purposeful universe, definitely. And we all have a purpose. We all a part of it. So ain't no point in being afraid of it. It's definitely not holding on to the fear. We don't need to attach to them outcomes. And so, finally, we'll talk about the fear of loss. And that's a big one, too. Feels good to breathe. The fear of loss, right? My girl gonna leave me. Your husband, he cheating on you. I can't make my car payment. You know, I might lose my job. You know, they think such and such about me. I'ma lose this. I'ma lose my family. I'ma lose my money. I got beat online, I believe, just a scammer online, and they got me for a few $1,000s, a few $100s, a couple, you know. Well, being that this is a purposeful universe, you know, how we distinguish that fear is by understanding and realizing that sometimes in order to build, we first got to destroy. You know, many times that loss can be the gateway to something a whole lot bigger and a whole lot better. You know, so don't attach so much to the outcome. You know, it's like uncertainty. You know, uncertainty not only is just not attaching the outcome a remedy for it, but also understanding that uncertainty, but also loss can be is the gateway to possibility. You know, a lot of times we have to lose. You know, I hear Mike Tyson talking about one of his favorite fighters lost his first fight, won 50 fights, lost one, and then won 75. No, I lost my hearing. I lost my hearing, but I gained so much. You know, when I lost my hearing, I finally had the time. I was like, okay, well, I can't run around no more. I could, but it was just the perfect opportunity that I needed for me to sit down and write my first novel. You know, a lot of times the things that we're attaching to, that we're grasping onto, are the very things that are holding us back. You know what I'm saying? And so, loss, losing something, whatever it may be, I don't care what it was. You know, money, we can make more money. You know, some person, I mean, if you really meant to be with that person, then they'll be with you. But, you know, a lot of times a person is in your life just for a season. You know, they was there to show you something, to teach you something. You know, a job, you can lose one job. I can't even tell you how many times, man, I lost a job and got a better one. I think throughout my whole time working for somebody else, every time I left one job, I went to a better job. You know, but it's the grasping. It's not so much the loss that hurts, you know, but it's the holding on to it and telling yourself and thinking that it's not supposed to be that way, you know. But just remember, this is a purposeful universe, man. And things change, things happen, and they happen for a reason. And it's okay that they happen. It is what it is. And so when we can let go of that fear, we free ourselves, we free up our creativity, and we free ourselves to look at things from a perspective of totality as to where that fear got you thinking something's bad is going to happen and I got to do something right now. When we can drop that, when you can lose that fear and drop that mentality, that you got to do something right now, because the brain, make no mistake, the brain isn't necessarily rationalizing all of these things out the way you are. The brain is part of the body, and so once that fear hits, the brain is thinking about fight or flight. And so even though you have some type of fear, one of these things that you're afraid of, and you had this type of fear, you might not be thinking about fighting, but the brain is still preparing the body for fight or flight. And that includes shutting down a lot of things, facilities that you normally use throughout your day to day. And so once we learn how to control that fear, and we can shut that amygdala down and bring those cortisol levels down and start thinking rationally, man, you can realize some things. I can't tell you how many relationships I look back on. I look back on some of these relationships that I was in and how I felt when they was over. But now I think about it, I'm like, man, that was the best thing that could have happened. She did what she did. That was the best thing that could have happened for me. It's her doing that, her saying that, or her being that way. I needed that person like I needed a hole in my head. But when we in the moment, right, when you feeling that fear, when you feeling those high emotions, you don't always see things like that. We don't always see how things work to our advantage. So loss, don't look at it like it's such a negative, And I mean, even the ultimate loss, we don't know what's on the other side. But it could be magnificent, whatever it is, And so there's a purposeful universe, y'all, and that's real. I want to talk more about that. I'm going to talk more and more about that. I just don't want to get into a lot of things that aren't, that don't deal with cognition, that don't deal with physics, because I just feel like a lot of times I feel like, well, for much of my life, I just felt I didn't really understand a lot of that stuff. If I couldn't see it, if I couldn't hold it, I didn't get it, but I'm really starting to get it now. And that's the basis. I see that that's the basis of 10 points of recovery. It's beyond physics. It's beyond the physical realm. It's metaphysical. And so, I appreciate everybody that's checking me out, just watch my videos, just bought a book, even people that know me, has heard me speak, things like that. I really appreciate y'all, man. And thanks for listening to me, but I'm going to get on out of here, man. Y'all be easy. Peace.